Good. Okay, I'm going to call the special select board meeting of Tuesday, January 15th to order and begin with approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any changes that anybody would like to make to the agenda? Okay, and we do have an executive session following the meeting. So all in favor of approving the agenda as drafted signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, we'll turn to approval of the minutes of December 18th regular business meeting.
Moved.
I had a tiny,
Second.
Moved and seconded. Okay, and changes.
very small change. Line 303, remove the word said.
Okay. Any other?
Also, my name, the first half of the minute, my name is spelled right, then the last name is spelled differently.
We'll fix the spell check.
Please.
Perfect. Anything else? Okay, so all in favor of approving the minutes with minor changes signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Excuse me. Okay, next is citizen comments. Is there anyone here for something that's not on the agenda? Okay, we'll go to appointment of a town representative to the Addison County Economic Development Corps Board. As you remember, we appointed Kathleen as an interim and put out a notice that we were looking for someone because no one had stepped forward, and Jeff Olson has volunteered and submitted a letter of interest to us, and guess I'd have you just come say hi to the board and introduce yourself, please. Yes.
I'm Jeff Olson, and I own Addison County Real Estate, which I bought about a year ago from George Brewer. I know some of you know George as well. In addition, my wife and I own a couple of properties in Middlebury on High Street and on Court Street. And I'm motivated, to throw my hat in the ring on this because I see a fair number of problems on the horizon economically. For the first time in decades, the population of Addison County is dwindling, not by much, but it's picking up steam. Young people are leaving. Both my daughters have left for big cities and probably will never come back other than for Christmas. Population is aging. So anything that I can do to help create more economic opportunity, I think the better. I've also been very entrepreneurial all my life, probably started 6 or 7 businesses. And I noticed that the board of the organization is largely large organization people, the Simmons, or not Simmons, UTC and the college and some of the other big employers, Cabot and so forth. So I think that I might be able to add something as a small bit entrepreneur to the board, and of course represent the interests of Middlebury.
And I'll draw attention, Jeff is not a Middlebury resident, but he does own, as he said, not only properties, but a business here in Middlebury. And he also is chair of the Weybridge Planning Commission, and has a lot of experience, as he points out. And I think there is nothing that says that our representative has to be a resident of Middlebury. And so I bring him to you as my nominee for our position on the board.
I'll make a motion to sign the Select Board resolution appointing Jeff Olson as Middlebury's representative to the Addison County Economic Development Corporation Board.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any final comments?
No, I think one of the things that you also bring is, and we've heard frequently, is shortage of housing,
Yes.
from people in the real estate, from employers, and it's across all segments. So
Right.
the fact that you bring that to the table is a strength too. So I'm happy to have you on board.
Absolutely.
So all in favor of the motion to nominate Jeff Olson is Middlebury's representative, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right, Jeff.
Good.
Thank you very much for stepping
Thank
forward.
you.
Thanks for
Thank
stepping.
you.
It's a little bit early for our hearing. Chief, I'm going to pull you forward here and do yours because our hearing's is warned for 7:10. I think you can get yours done in 5 minutes.
I'll try to be shorter than that.
Okay.
Not too much shorter. We're still gonna-
We're just doing something different this year as far as upfit of the cruisers. It's always been done on a pieces parts basis with the upfit spread over a number of different entities, and we can never control the costs that way. What we've done this year is try to consolidate the cost for the upfit of the car to one specific vendor. We give them the car, we get it back, and it's all in one piece.
All done, yeah.
And so we solicited some bids. Yipes Corporation out of Williston had a bid of $7,700. Hardwire Auto Electronics, $7,569.13 is the low bidder, but when we looked at what are the cost of transporting these cars up, I gotta have 2 officers go up. That's gonna be on overtime, so it's a longer drive to Waterville than Williston. I can get them up and back in an hour and a half or less than 2 hours. So that would reduce the cost. I can bring them in a little early to transport the cars up and get them back. So the actual overall cost for Yipes would actually be lower, even though there's specific bid for pieces, parts, and assembly is, about $111, $110 higher than hardwired auto electronics. So I would recommend the Yipes Corporation.
Questions of Chief? This is recommendation of the Infrastructure Committee as well, or this didn't go through the Infrastructure
Should
Committee?
we go through public safety?
Okay. Just curious how this compares with when you were doing it piecemeal. Did we save money as well? Is making it simpler?
No, a long time ago, we just used to have Public Works do it, and it would tie the garage up for a day or so. Now with all the electronics in the car, you really need somebody with specialty. We had a radio person do the radio. We had another vendor put in the cameras and things like that. Another vendor would put in the hard parts. We'd have the pieces shipped to us. Here they'd sit until we could get somebody to ship them to another vendor to install. And it was just getting untenable to do this. The cars, we took delivery of a car last year in June. The car wasn't on the road until September. So it's just not a way to do business. Here, we ship the car up. A couple of weeks later, we have the car back and it's finished.
Yeah. Okay, so we don't have a comparison, historical comparison.
You know, I tried to look up some of the pieces, parts cost of this. Some of these are buried in the DPW budget, what some of their guys are doing. And last year, the upfit for one of the cars was over $10,000. So, I mean, that's the closest we can do. I went back about 10 years and looked what it cost when we had a single vendor do it. And the prices then were about the same as the prices we're getting bids now. So we're looking at things that have gotten a little more efficient, especially since this vendor is also a vendor for the pieces, parts that go in the car. We specify what parts we want. They're an ordering vendor, so they get them at a slight discount, then we would pay for them.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion to award a contract to Yipes Corporation for the equipment upfit of the police department's new cruiser at a total cost of $7,700.
Second.
Moving and second. Any final questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, Chief, a couple minutes to spare. Well, I don't believe anybody will complain if I get started a little bit early.
Are you here for the library budget?
So, this is our opportunity for Select Board to take public testimony on the proposed FY20 general fund budget, prepare any final questions or requests for revisions prior to the board's January 22nd meeting, when the budget will be finalized for presentation to the voters in March. Kathleen's summary revisions since the board's December budget meetings are in your packet. In accordance with 24 VSA 127-1302, the board is conducting a public hearing to take questions and comments from Middlebury community regarding the proposed FY20 general fund budget. I want to turn over the floor over to Kathleen Ramsey, our town manager, to lead the discussion with an update on revisions to the draft budget that have been made since the board's last meeting on December 18th. First, let me warn, because this is an official public hearing, if anyone has questions or wants to make a comment, after being recognized, please come forward to the microphone. State your first and last name for the record, and then direct your feedback to the select board so we can accurately capture for the minutes in the meeting. Those watching on MCTV can hear you clearly as well. There's a microphone. Adjust the microphone if you would, please. So with that, I'll declare the public hearing to discuss the draft FY20 general fund budget open, and we'll turn the floor over to Kathleen.
Okay. I have a couple of copies of the budget up here if anybody's looking for them.
I got
It outlines in yellow all of the changes that were made since our last meeting. As you may recall, the board had some fine-tuning to do to the first draft budget proposal. Those changes total $15,500. First one on line 299 was reducing the service contract on the municipal building heating system from $7,000 to $2,500, a reduction of $4,500. The library building, we also reduced the service contract on the heating system from $2,000 to $1,700, a reduction of $300. Line 455, as you may recall, we had a discussion about the old wastewater treatment facility, heat and electricity. As the heat and electricity has been disconnected, we reduced that from $500 to $0, a reduction of $500. Police department building capital, 467 is the line item. Funding for storm windows, we removed that from the request due to the limited return on investment, reduced the line item from $3,400 to $1,200, a reduction of $2,200. Fire department, station number 2, line item 583, the Kings Row heating fuel. We reduced that from $2,500 to $2,000 to reflect the expense trend, a reduction of $500. DPW also had a line item for heating and electricity at the old wastewater treatment facility, which was reduced from $1,000 to $0, a reduction of $1,000. Here's the biggie. DPW street lighting was reduced from $78,000 to $70,000, a reduction of $8,000. Line item 647. And then finally, our sole addition for the evening was $1,500 for the tot time attendant who was inadvertently left out of the initial budget proposal. So that is a review of the changes made since our initial go-through of the budget draft 1. Just this afternoon, I placed in your packet an item for items you may want to discuss changing this evening. His proposed changes to the second draft of the FY20 budget. I have it up on the screen here. Line item 42, I'll go first through revenue line item projections. This is the administrative charge for the water department. Each year we try to allocate what our administrative expenses are to the water and sewer departments, prorate those expenses. It had been many, many years, maybe 15 years, since we had taken a look at these numbers. In that time, we have added a new director of operations, made some improvements in our accounting department, and increased the amount of project planning that the director of planning obviously does. So we're proposing a significant increase in the administrative charges for water and sewer. Provided a breakdown of what we're looking at here in water and sewer administrative expenses. We're estimating that our accounting department spends 60% of their time on the general fund, 20% on water, and 20% on sewer. Director of Operations, both the director and the administrative assistant spend 60% of their time on general fund, 25% on water, and 15% on sewer. Public Works Planning is a third each on general fund, water, and sewer, bringing the total general fund allocation for those three departments to $312,307. For the water department, $139,621, and for the sewer department, $119,921. I showed on the spreadsheet in your packet what the current charges are, and they are $98,000 for the water department versus $139 currently for the water department. That's an increase of $41,000. So we're proposing spreading that out over 3 fiscal years to ease the transition to the new allocation. So you can see the breakdown for the sewer department also, and those are the proposals that I made to you in the proposed changes for the budget. As you know, we'll be budgeting for the FY19 Water and Sewer Fund later this year, so we can incorporate the higher figure into those departments' budgets. Interest income, reviewed this line item and made a projection with Town Treasurer Jackie Sullivan. Our first draft of the budget had included a projection of $30,000. She believes a conservative estimate of our actual projected revenue would be about $60,000. So that's an increase of $30,000 there. So those revenue changes amount to $54,637. And then on your expense line items, just today we had breaking news that our elevator here at the municipal building needs repair. That repair is estimated at about $4,700. As part of that, we looked at switching to a premium elevator service contract, which would cover repairs such as this that are just due to wear and tear on the elevator. And that would be an additional $1,500 a year. So we'll be able to deduct, it's going to cut the current bill before us in half. So instead of paying $4,700, it'd be about $2,300. They'll give us some credit for switching to the premium plan. So that's a proposal there, an increase of $1,500. Line item 1076, I had estimated benefits for the 2 new positions proposed in the budget, family plans. Backing off that, estimating for two-person plans instead, thinking that one may be a family plan, one may be a single, or both could be some variation. So there should be some. I think that the $59,000 budgeted for 2 family plans for the 2 positions is too conservative. So that's a reduction of $13,000. And finally, 1,108 transfer to capital improvements. In speaking to Bill Kernan, he thought that we could phase in the funding for the new cover for the salt shed although it is at the end of its life expectancy. We think we could stretch it out another couple of years to ease the burden in this year. So that would be a $45,000 expense, $15,000 raised each year for the next 3 years. So that would be a $30,000 reduction in this year's budget, making your total expense line item reductions $41,500, with a total amount in all of these changes of $96,137. Happy to answer any questions you have about those proposals.
So this means that we're not gonna see a tax rate increase?
No, we had, our first draft of the budget proposal showed a tax rate increase of
Oh, this-
4.4 cents. So this would reduce that 4.4 cent increase to just over 3 cents.
I'm sorry, I was looking at this and that's just related to your worksheet
Yeah,
and not the big picture.
yeah.
Okay, got it now.
So that's an overview of where we are, some changes for discussion, and I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has about the budget proposal. And also, we have most of our department heads here to answer questions as well.
Well, they're compiling their questions. I'm just curious, they're willing to backdate our contract on the elevator and assume the repairs under the new contract?
Reduce the bill by half,
Wow,
so.
okay.
We still owe the balance, right? Next year?
This year.
On that, yeah.
Fred?
Hi, I'm Fred Dunnington. I was looking in the select board packet at the draft warning, and there's items that relate to the budget, but I can't figure out where they fall. The item would be your article, draft Article 3 on the borrowing for equipment purchases. Does the debt service for that appear in the debt section, or is that an equipment funded thing?
Okay, so the authorization for borrowing is for FY '20, after the town meeting approves it. The debt service actually goes in the budget for FY '21, so we borrow 1 year and then put the debt service in the other year.
But don't we do this every year? We borrow some for some vehicles?
Mhm.
So, there must be some amount in this current year that's coming
Right.
from some part of the budget.
I'm happy to get you the breakdown of what we're budgeting for debt service from the equipment fund. To note that, so you have in the highway department, line item, it's a good example.
So it's transferred to the equipment fund.
Transfer
So-
to the equipment fund reserve. We have transfer to the equipment fund for maintenance on line 749, and it's transferred to the equipment fund for debt service and reserve. This year and last year, there was more than required for debt service in the equipment fund reserve. And we are proposing to reduce the amount borrowed by what is being set aside in the reserve.
I guess where I'm going with it is I'm interested in the amount of interest we pay. If this is financed through local financial institutions, or?
We pay about $5,000 currently.
So what would it take? Because this has come up at prior town meetings, and I've been wondering about this with Dorothy, my better half, who's a better numbers person than I am. She wonders, what would it take if we have funds with a substantial fund balance in them to finance this?
Okay, so we
internally rather
have
than
just updated a new equipment fund rotation schedule, which is available in the Infrastructures Committee's last packet. $425,000 is a year is what it would take to capitalize, fully capitalize the equipment fund.
I guess I'm misunderstanding. We're still each year putting money in from the operating budget to transfer to the equipment fund to pay the costs of the vehicles. And what I was talking about was the 5,000, I think, that the amount of interest that we pay to an outside entity that we could fund ourselves through borrowing from ourselves, since we have a substantial
Oh,
Cross Street Bridge fund and
okay. So I just spoke to the treasurer today about what we're earning on our bank balances is about 2.3%, and what we're paying for borrowing is about 2.7%.
so it would be less. The
It's
spread between that is
Negligible, though.
okay. Well, I'll try to explain that to Dorothy.
And I'm happy to give a better presentation on that at
Okay,
a future
well,
date.
And I had one other question. I think this is related to the budget because you, in related to the land trust fund, and the Battelle trustees have indicated they're going to fund an amount this year, but they say that their income is down. I was wondering, there's another tower that's gone up, and is there less income now coming in for some reason on the?
Yeah, one of our major tenants, I can't remember the circumstance of that, but we do have reduced rents. We have been working on, we are going to anticipate some new contracts as part of the new tower, so hopefully we'll build that over time.
I was impressed in Tony Riffle's letter about how much over the years has been totally transferred. But do you know offhand what the balance is in the land trust fund roughly?
$300,000.
300, okay. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Fred. Victoria?
Victoria DeWind. I have sort of questions all over.
Shoot.
I
don't
Well,
think there's a lot of competition for questions this evening, so.
The Battelle Trust payments, I was wondering about. In the past, we funded 2 cents, I think.
1 cent.
It's always been 1?
Yep.
Okay. So that answers that question.
2 cents on the fire fund.
Oh, right, okay. I noticed in the capital improvements budget, there's, for next year, I guess it is paving gravel roads, and I was wondering what that's about.
What's the line?
Yeah, what's the line,
Um,
yeah.
It's
It's in the capital
It's a
budget.
capital improvements, I don't have that.
Okay.
So I think we're setting aside, starting to set aside money every year to transition some gravel roads to pavement. Some of that is related to the new, Dan, help me, the state's water, the road permit, the road general permit.
And so here it is for next fiscal year, there's no money in it for this current or future fiscal year, FY 1920.
Right.
It's tentatively being talked about for the following year.
How many miles of roads does that, I mean, which
We're looking at
roads?
We're looking at Happy Valley Road
Oh,
for the future paving project.
and that, so that 255,000 for just that one road?
Probably.
Wow. No wonder you don't go around paving all the time. Okay, there was a reference to the 2011 bond for projects in the highway construction, and I was wondering what that was.
Which
It
budget?
was the big bond,
Yeah.
Dan,
Okay.
please.
Back in 2011, voters approved a bond for highway projects.
And you'll notice that these totals are pretty much the same every year. As the payment is, as a bond goes on, the interest goes down, and the amount we put in the upper row is for actual, projects. So that was a $3 million bond that the voters approved in 2011, and that's the principal and interest, and then the remainder is around that 578,000 per year that we can put in the road projects.
If you remember, that was when we had so many deferred road
Right.
projects, and the pricing seemed attractive, as well as the cost of bonding, and it made a lot of sense to try to pull a lot of those projects ahead and get a catch-up.
So what we did is, we structured this so that around that $570,000 that we put into capital improvements every year, we took out the bond for $3 million, paying the principal and interest out of that same roughly $570,000 with no cost of increase in the tax rate. So
Let's see. I'm, needless to say, thrilled that there's consideration for using the excess local option taxes for reducing expenses, although.
Would you speak a little
Oh,
louder?
sorry. Although even a 3-cent increase on top of what probably will happen to our school taxes, it's still going to be a bit of a hit. So I was wondering how much excess money, not kept for maintenance, but how much excess money is there in the, I saw 353,000, but I didn't know if that was the total excess or what you're proposing to use.
That is roughly the annual excess over receipts, over the debt service and maintenance. It's about $350,000, $400,000 a year. The Cross Street Bridge fund balance is about $2 million currently.
$2 million, okay. I guess then I would suggest you look at ways you could use more of that. $2 million, I mean, especially if we're borrowing to buy vehicles, and even though it's negligible difference, it's whatever we can do. Why would we borrow money when we have, and I'm not saying use all of it, but you're proposing to use maybe a sixth of it.
We are also in the infrastructure committee grappling with a huge backlog of projects, and there has been some discussion of using an amount of the local option tax fund surplus towards a large project or two.
So over and above the
In future
350
years.
In future,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, well, the more the better, because I read in the paper about changes to fees that will go to support community television. Is that going to, and we've got an increase in the budget here, so I was wondering, do you anticipate having to need more than what's being proposed with the fee changes?
Yeah, it sounds pretty scary, doesn't it,
Yeah.
with the cuts coming and MCTV. This is not a reaction to that. We haven't heard anything from MCTV asking for more. There was a request for some new audiovisual equipment here at the town offices, which is part of their request this year. And also, many, many years ago, MCTV had worked with us at a tight budget time and reduced their request for appropriation from $5,000 to $3,000. And they thought that this was a good time to reinstate their initial $5,000 appropriation, which is reflected in the budget. That was what was driving that.
Okay. On line 2 56, this new position in accounting.
Mhm.
Is that work that was already being done by someone else, or is this I'm just wondering what the new position is about and why it's being added. And
Right. The Personnel Committee will be hearing that on next Monday. Briefly, it is to improve our grants administration capability. Currently, existing staff is fitting that in between other tasks, and we have had some audit findings, both about grant administration and segregation of duties, and that is to address those concerns of our auditors.
is that a full-time position?
That would be a 30-hour-a-week position.
Yeah. Okay. So, to follow up, transfers to the equipment fund, it puts money in, but it's not sufficient to buy the equipment.
Right.
We still have to borrow.
Right.
Okay. Why would it not save to transfer enough money to avoid borrowing?
So what?
We borrowed from
Right.
instead of even borrowing from ourselves?
What we're thinking about, staff is thinking of recommending, is slowly increasing that over time toward the $425,000 figure, but phasing in so that we would transfer to a more of a cash-based system.
So and we're borrowing $5,000, the interest is $5,000 a year? Okay. That wouldn't put much of an impact on the equipment fund. On the local option fund.
Yeah.
Is Chief Hanley still here?
Yeah.
No. I was wondering about overtime in the police department. I'm wondering should we just be hiring more people instead of paying overtime?
That's a challenge. Chief can address that. Yeah.
I guess I can use this one, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. People are out of work because they're sick or people have vacation, so we have vacancies. Unlike some other town departments, the staff goes down, they may not cancel a job or do something. I have to have people on the street. They have to be here. In the past couple of years, it's been a little difficult. Right now, I've got 2 officers out injured and another one retiring in a couple of months, so I'm going to be down 3 people. So there's a give and take on the budget. We budget for the best of times. We budget for the anticipated vacancies that we're going to have based on how many vacation days. But the actuals are always different because of that variable that's in there. But as we see, we got 2 officers that are out on workers' comp that are being paid by insurance, and we're backfilling with overtime. So there's an over expenditure in one and an under expenditure in the other, and we just kind of monitor that the best we can so that we can bring the budget to 0 every year so that we don't get 2 out. Again, it's not, I will tell you, the guys don't like working overtime. It's not something they do willingly. We have to compel them to work sometimes because we have to have people on the street. And so it's not like we have a surplus of people. But it's just difficult to do. When you run a 24/7, you have a limited number of people. And even adding more people is just more people that are going to be taking time off. Or having people, and then you have a surplus.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to balance our numbers for what we're going to need to provide the service that we have. And I think we're there at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's just a dynamic with all these variables that we just try to manage as best we can.
Right, the unanticipated.
Yeah, I mean, you can anticipate a certain amount of vacancies because you know how many vacation days, who's going to have this or that, and we can guess on that. So we budget based on, as I said, the best of times, and then we just make adjustments in the year as we go along.
Great, thank you. Line 695, supplies and mowing. I was wondering why there was an increase in that, given that over the past 2 years, we haven't even spent half of what was budgeted, or just half.
Okay, I'll have to look into that and get back to you, Susan.
Is this under highway?
Yeah, Highway summer.
Bill's not here. Is this one of the ones that got combined?
I'll ask Bill and respond.
Okay.
This is line 1004, the recreation center heating fuel. I was just curious why from 17 to 18, the cost doubled. Was that when it? Yeah.
That was early in the life of the recreation center and the town offices. Initially, I had consolidated the bills and the payment of the bills out of a municipal building line item, but we saw the wisdom of breaking that down to allocate the costs between the rec center and the town offices. So that is the way we're budgeting for it now.
Uh-huh. And you anticipate it to be even though we haven't used much this year,
It's the electricity, are you talking about heating fuel for the
the heating
recreation?
fuel, yeah.
Okay. So I can double check on that.
Yeah, but keep in mind that 896.48 is only through December. So that's,
Right,
that wouldn't include any heating fuel for the coldest months of the year.
Right.
So you really kind of have to look at the FY18 actual, and that's showing the 56.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think the 55 is
Mhm.
probably an accurate number
Mhm.
there.
Okay.
When did the rec center come online?
January 2016.
Okay. So 17 would have been
Full year.
a full year.
Yeah.
But again, we're not sure the breakout between the two, so.
Right.
Okay, I guess,
FY18 was also a pretty cold year too, so.
we'll see.
Yeah.
I guess that is, so I read this right, that you're proposing to use $353,000 from the option fund towards capital improvements. Okay. Can we prepay on the debt that we have? They don't let you do that?
No.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Fred?
Fred Donington again. I have one more question. On line 166, just a number that jumped out, you see the budget item in the year, the actual amount is $5,000 over several years. And then suddenly in year-to-date, we have $55,371. And that just seems like a unusual increase.
I could be wrong, but I wonder if our annual contribution to the Land Use Conservation Fund hit that account, and it should be in a reserve account.
It doesn't match the number in the Battelle trustee's letter, so it just seemed,
So that would be
Odd
for
number.
FY19. And it may include one of these $5,000 payments, but let me check.
thank you.
So, I'm glad that two of you came prepared to grill us. Is there anybody else who has a question? Okay. We certainly intend to deliberate some more before we finalize our FY '20 final general fund budget. I think we owe it to talk about what our target is. We owe Kathleen some guidance, what we're comfortable with as a board, bringing to the taxpayers for a target increase. Right now, if we approve the recommended changes that Kathleen has, it's going to be somewhere around 3.1 cents. And Kathleen and I discussed today trying to find out what the implications are for the school tax rate with our reappraisals. So it's a little bit early yet, but hopefully we can get some indication before town meeting maybe.
So that doesn't go into effect because we got that letter of our new common level of appraisal.
It'll
And we're
be,
still down like around 80, so that doesn't go effect until the next budget year, right?
I've reached out to the reappraisal firm to see what the timing is of the new tax rate, of the new reappraisal numbers and CLA.
Okay.
so I guess if there are no other questions, I'll declare the public hearing to discuss the draft FY '20 general fund budget closed. And we'll have an opportunity to talk here as a board. Okay, next item. I believe Jim Gish is here to introduce memorandum of agreement with Marble Works Partnership regarding an easement for Lazarus Park. As you remember, we discussed in their design of what would be the Lazarus Park to make it handicap accessible, that it would continue to get the space and have the appropriate handicap accessibility incline, that we would need to get in, continue it outside of town-owned property. And so they've been working with Harbor Works Partnership and Jim.
Yeah, so Kim Smith, on behalf of Marble Works Partnership, has very generously agreed to grant the town a permanent easement so that the state can construct an ADA accessible pathway that will connect Main Street to the Marble Works and vice versa. So what you have in front of you is a memorandum of agreement that kind of generally summarizes, the plan here. The state will build it, and the town will maintain it, and Marble Works will grant us the permanent easement. If you authorize Kathleen to countersign the memorandum, which Kim Smith has already signed, the next step will be the development of a survey to fix the points of the land. The state has agreed to supply us with that survey, saving the town $4,000 or $5,000 in survey costs, and we'll move to a formal warranty deed that will formalize the easement.
Any questions? Pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion to authorize our town manager, Kathleen Ramsey, to sign a memorandum of agreement, or memorandum of understanding with the Marble Works Partnership, outlining terms for the conveyance of a perpetual easement to the town to facilitate development of the future Lazarus Park.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any final comments, questions? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right. I intend to send a thank you to Kim. I think that was very nice for him to support it. I know there is a benefit to them, but things don't always go so smooth, and it doesn't always seem so
Right.
cut and dried. So it's nice to have somebody who's interested in doing good for the town.
And they've been a great partner during the construction project, which has impacted them significantly during the year. So it's been good to work with them all around this year. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you, Jim. Next is follow-up of our January 10th Infrastructure Committee meeting. And the first item is a grant application for funding for construction of the East Middlebury Village Flood Resiliency Measures. And is this something
Sure.
you're familiar with and want to walk us through?
So this is the final phase of the East Middlebury Flood Resiliency Project. This is the grant application for the funding to do the project, which is, what's the total? I'm sorry, it's 1.9 roughly, and FEMA shares 75%, the 1,428.
$1,904,000.
Yeah, oh, right here, thank you. And then the town's share would be 476,000. Do you know if Amy heard back from the state contact? Okay. So, given the speed at which these things have progressed, we want to get this going and get it submitted, and we've gotten the first 2 phases approved, so we're hopeful this third phase will go through, and then we'll need to do some outreach and go to the voters with a request to meet the to match for our part of it. What else am I forgetting?
So we're anticipating that that's going to be a bond vote of $476,000 for the project. The Infrastructure Committee thought that it would be best to wait for confirmation from FEMA that we were eligible for the grant and we're going to receive it before taking it to the voters.
Yes.
Do you have questions?
Do we have a life expectancy of the project?
So that's been discussed, and as part of the project, there will be measurements that can be taken from specific points that will measure the amount of sediment that fills in the areas that so they're removing some of the areas so the water can flow out better and take up more space. And so DPW or whoever we decide could take measurements and evaluate over time the buildup of the sediment again, and we could choose to do regular maintenance in those areas to keep it within a certain level. What those levels are and who does the measuring and all that really hasn't been determined, but there will be a way to monitor change and do regular maintenance in that area. Is there anything else?
Thanks.
Okay, pleasure of the board.
So I'll make a motion to approve the submittal of a grant application, including a local share of $476,000. Begin public outreach regarding the project in anticipation of scheduling a special town meeting.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any final questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Next item is considering bids for resurfacing of the Harold Curtis Basketball Court in East Middlebury. Infrastructure Committee is making a recommendation. Is this another one you're familiar with? You want to?
I am, but Dustin is here, and
Yeah.
he is the expert, so
Dustin, why don't you come
if he's
forward and tell us
comfortable-
about it?
if you guys have questions, he may be better able to answer them.
Thank you, Heather.
Yeah.
So as you know, last spring we went out to bid, and the numbers we got back we weren't satisfied with, so we went out to bid again this past fall. And we're pretty comfortable that the project is going to come in around somewhere between the $40,000 to $45,000 range. And within the second round of bids, we did receive a bid that we wanted to accept. A company called Vermont Recreational that comes with a lot of good references from other Parks and Rec entities around the state. And the biggest challenge was just finding the funding, but we were able, with a $14,000 match from the fire district in East Middlebury, plus some money set aside for some Harold Curtis Park improvements, we're at that number. So we just wanted to bring it before. We took it to infrastructure last week, and they passed it along to you guys, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
When you say full project bidder, does that include the fence or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
That includes the fence?
Yep.
That's good.
Yes, so the full bid of the $42,095 does include the bid and the project. It included adjustable, right?
Adjustable
height
hoops, which we were against to begin with, because it just opens it up to some deterioration from kids hanging on it, stuff like that. So if we made them just permanent 10-foot, that would save us around $1,200, which would bring us down to the funding that we have available.
which is the $40,865. So I'll make a motion to award a contract to Vermont Recreational for the Harold Curtis Park Basketball Court Replacement Project for a total cost of $40,865.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right.
All right, thank you guys.
And the last item on infrastructure is considering award of a Phase 1 evaluation and study services of the library heating system.
So Dana's here, but, you know, if you want to join us, you can. This is the first phase of evaluating what we need for switching to a full hot water system. It will look at different possibilities for fuel, including biomass, and it will also look at the impact on potential expansion, and we're just considering doing phase 1 at this time. Anything else?
Well said.
Okay.
Questions?
But if you have questions, Dana can probably answer better.
So what they're looking for is an appropriation of $2,200 for the Phase 1 evaluation and study.
So I'll make a motion to award a contract to Engineering Services of Vermont LLC for a Phase 1 evaluation and study of the Isley Library heating system for a total cost of $2,200.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions?
Will this look at, will this look at possibly an alternate location within the building for the equipment? And the reason I ask the question is knowing that there's some plans, whether it's, you know, or intention of whether it's a partial or a complete rehabilitation of the building, that maybe in fact where it's located geometrically is not the most efficient place in the building, especially for other use and the possibility of modifying that level to make it more usable, and so maybe relocating the equipment where it's positioned.
That's a great question. I don't know specifically if we're going to be looking at change.
So you still ended up here.
Should have come up in the beginning. We didn't talk specifically with them about whether they would be exploring different placements for the actual heater, but we did talk specifically about making sure that any evaluation considers that some kind of expansion renovation will be taking place in the future, and that any system will need to be able to scale up to that and handle the increased square footage. So I assume as part of that they would consider alternate locations. I can certainly let them know that we expect that to be considered as part of the scope of the evaluation.
That would actually, I think, be pretty nice if we can add that in, because part of it is I just look at the lower level of Ilsley, and I know why it formed the way it is, but it just seems rather inefficient. You know, we have a boiler room right smack in the middle of what could be usable space otherwise, and so maybe by shifting the position and looking at what the long-term plans are that Gossens Bachman put together, and maybe it's just geometrically moving to another location. Obviously, not a lot of time put onto it, but just to at least explore alternatives.
It's a great idea.
Well, it's an okay idea.
Any other questions while I'm here?
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
Okay,
Be interesting to see what they come back with.
pleasure of the board.
I made a motion.
Yeah,
Yes, you did.
and it was
You
seconded.
made the motion, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Next is an art loan agreement for gravity sculpture by Eben Markowski. I think you started this one. Kind of pretty cool piece of art.
Yes, actually, Bill Brooks from the Sheldon Museum heard at one of his events of the availability of the gravity sculpture and reached out to the town to see if there was some place that we would be willing to host it in a prominent location. And we met with the artist and the representative of the owner of the art, and they are agreeable to loaning it for us for display on the town offices plaza for a period of a year. And the proposed agreement is in your packet. Benj Putnam does have a suggestion about the indemnification clause. There is just some inconsistent language proposed in the agreement, but other than that, he has reviewed the agreement and is fine with it.
So it's going to be placed outside?
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
How big is it, do you know?
It's
It's
pretty
pretty
large.
big, but it's not as huge as it looks there. When Eben was here, he did do some quick measurements and believes it'll fit there nicely.
And besides adding the insurance, there's no cost?
There may be some additional costs for signage that's needed, as in stay off the elephant signage. But I hope to do some fundraising or solicitations toward that.
Okay.
What does that thing weigh?
Yeah, it's quite an endeavor to get
50
it down here and set up.
No, the name, it's just the weight of the earth, that's all.
There you go, philosophical.
Fred's first,
I want to commend the town for considering public art. It's a challenging thing. I noticed that the color picture of this in your packet shows that it's steel. And I wondered about the rust staining on the sidewalk, and God forbid what happens if someone comes out of a bar some night and decides to change its color, or what liability do we have?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't there something in there about that?
we have to insure it, so.
It's an impressive sculpture, and it would be fun to see somewhere, but I'm wondering if this is going to be a huge distraction of people driving around and not paying attention because they're gawking at this thing. You know, you have to pay attention in the rotary.
An attractive nuisance.
Yeah. So,
I like to think our town office building is so beautiful that people are gawking at it.
well, it's a little different.
So
Questions, comments?
do we, if for some reason we choose to put this up and it doesn't work out, or people are climbing on it or whatever, do we have to keep it there for a year, or could we choose to take it down before then?
They've been easy to work with so far, and really are looking for a good place to get it out in the community, and if it doesn't work for either party.
I'm sure that they would, if it became difficult for us to patrol it and keep it safe, that they would want to move it.
What about in College Park?
Hmm?
Putting it in College Park?
Does our agreement
We,
specify location?
We met with the artist and the owner, looked at various locations. We looked at the Riverfront Park, we looked at the College Park, and the best location we thought was here at the town offices on the plaza. One of the other benefits is that we do have a security system here, and we do have a camera trained on the plaza.
I rather like the location, and I think, I mean, it's public art in a very public place, and I think it's an experiment that's worth trying. I mean, if it turns out to be a nuisance, I think we can take measures to alter our decision, but I think that it's worth trying. And it's an imaginative piece of art, I think.
I've actually seen it. I'm trying to remember where I saw it.
At the Burlington Airport?
Burlington Airport, yeah, that's where it's like 10 feet tall, or, yeah. So pleasure of the board, then.
I move,
Go ahead.
authorize town manager Kathleen Ramsey to sign a 1-year art loan agreement for Gravity.
Second.
Okay, any final comments among the board? Okay, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Next is a review of our first draft of the town meeting warning. And Kathleen, I think, will take us through this.
Okay. So, we have our first blank is the location and address, but let's circle back to that at the end. So I did the usual setup. First article is the reports of the town officers. Second article is the budget request. Third has been our equipment fund request. And fourth is the collection of taxes. You will notice that there is a proposed change this year, going from 3 installments, one on August 15th, November 15th, and March 15th, to 2 installments, one on October 15th and one on March 15th. This is driven this year by the reappraisal. It will not be possible to get out tax bills in a timely way in July, and this would give us time to get the reappraisal completed, all of the grievances heard, and tax bills out.
This would be a one-time.
I think the proposal is to see how it goes and what the response is from residents, if they are agreeable to the 2-year, or if that's too much of a 2 installments, or if that's too much of a burden going back to 3.
Okay.
But certainly pushing that first installment back a little bit is always a push for us to get the tax bills out by July 10th. And then the fifth article is the surplus local option tax funds for capital improvements. One thought I had is to put that before the budget adoption, since our budget assumes that we're going to be doing that. And if for some reason voters didn't approve that, we'd be looking at an 8-cent tax increase, so, or an 8% tax increase. So does it make sense to have that discussion, have the presentation of the budget, but go through in depth that question right up front on the town meeting?
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
And also, there was some discussion of the equipment fund last year, so maybe we do the local option tax first, equipment fund, and then the
Final budget.
the budget. So that comprises the floor action, and then we have a busy agenda for voting by Australian ballot. we have the petition on the climate solutions resolution, which came in as one petition, working with the petitioners, and Webster broke it down into 2 articles, as shown here in the draft warning. We hear of a petition circulating for CVOEO. That's article number 9. Neighbor Works of Western Vermont contacted us about an appropriation. I contacted them and let them know that we require a citizen's petition. I don't know of one circulating, but I just wanted to put a placeholder in there. Also heard that Habitat for Humanity of Addison County is circulating a petition for $3,000. And then we just received certification from the town clerk of the plastic bag petition. And the lead petitioner, Amy McKinnock, is planning to come see the board in February to do some pre-vote publicity of this.
So the Health and Human Services new appropriations, those aren't figured into the budget.
That's right.
So if they are on the warning and the town does approve them, then that also changes the budget.
Mm-hmm.
Tax, is a tax impact.
And so we've also often had those agencies come before us, right? Before town meeting or not?
The existing ones, we
The
took a
existing
percentage
ones.
of each year.
I thought we had the new ones.
Well,
No?
if you'd like me to invite them in once we receive their petitions, happy to do that. And I could also, for the tax rate impact that we publish with the budget, include what the tax rate impact of those additional appropriations would be.
I mean, I guess it's up to the rest of the board whether, I'm just always curious for new appropriations for some information about how this affects their budget, how our appropriation affects their budget, what are other towns contributing, and just some information which I don't have right now, so I'm just curious. Will they present anything at town meeting?
Seems to me it's in their interest to do that.
They usually have someone get up and make a plea.
Okay.
Have we not taken those to Australia ballot in the past?
Yeah, these would be by Australian
They
ballot,
would
the
be,
new
okay.
ones. Yep.
All right.
The way I understand it, everything from Article 7 through 13 is all Australian ballot.
Okay. Any others?
So do
If
we-
you
Thoughts on
wanted
that?
to circle back to town meeting venue, you have in your packet an email from Chris English as a cover to an analysis he did of 2 potential locations, one being the high school and the other being Mary Hogan. Detailed analysis outlining the pros and cons of each venue. Both are currently available, but ask us to confirm very soon.
Seems to me like the high school was the preferred location overall.
And there haven't been any changes to the PA system or whatever we use, the audio at the high school since last year, or last time it was there. It'd be the same. As far as the microphone situation, Anne had some ideas about improving access to microphones, perhaps by having more volunteers with handheld microphones.
Yeah, actually, I think it's too bad that the first year we had it at the high school, we actually were prepared with JPs and that to move around the room with mics and give them to people. But there was also the mic set up in the front, and then there was no announcement made to people that they could do that. And so instead of anybody kind of raising their hand or acting like they couldn't get out of the middle of the seats, they just kind of kept quiet or whatever and then mentioned it afterwards. So we definitely had already thought of it as something that may be an issue there, but then people who decided to speak got up and went to the microphone. So yeah, the plan would definitely be to have maybe 3 microphones with JPs ready to assist people who would have any difficulty getting up for any reason.
So it sounds like you've addressed one of the cons, that leaves us with just one con, and there's significant more cons with Mary Hogan. Do we have a consensus that we would just go ahead with the high school then?
Yeah, I'd go
Is
for
there
that.
anybody who opposes that? If not, do we need a motion on that?
Is that something, Anne, that you'll take to the BCA?
Yes.
Anne had thought about having a brief BCA meeting perhaps before one of the next select board meetings to talk about setting the venue.
Just to confirm the venue.
Okay.
Okay.
Why don't you work towards the high school then?
Okay.
Seems like that's your recommendation. I think we're all on board with it.
Okay, yeah, certainly recommend, I mean, both facilities, they treat us very well.
Yeah.
And they're both easy to work with. But
And I think the parking is a significant issue, more so than us sitting a little bit different plane than.
right, and
I think the parking is.
my biggest concern is always if you have to carry a lot of equipment back and forth, if it happens to be a snowstorm day or
Yeah.
blizzard happening, it makes a huge difference, so.
Yeah.
That's actually the biggest issue I see here, more than the parking, is logistics of moving parts.
Yeah, it's a lot of moving parts.
So-
Well,
and I
for
remember-
them.
Right, well, that's true, but
Yeah.
I remember even last year, as you were taking down, that was a fairly extensive effort, so.
Yes.
The high school does make more sense to me, having lived through both of them.
All right.
Doesn't-
Good.
Okay, I think we're moving on then to Friends of Middlebury Hockey. I'd like to add a question to the town meeting warning, asking voters to approve an addition to the town's note with the National Bank of Middlebury to complete improvements to the second floor of the MSC and extend the term of the note. So why don't you walk us through that?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. My name is Mike McAuliffe. I'm president of Friends of Middlebury Hockey. I've served in that role for about 2.5 years now. Thank you for having us here tonight. I appreciate the opportunity. Kathleen, in particular, thanks to you for helping us get prepared for tonight. And Victor, thanks to you. You were on this board when we last came before you in 2006. And we're part of a unanimous vote to support our petition. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Hopefully we'll earn your support again.
Thank you.
I'm joined
Still
tonight.
playing.
Pardon?
Oh, yeah, I'm still playing it, right?
I'm joined tonight by Devin McLaughlin, who's been heading up the fundraising committee. That's been working for the past 2 years on a fundraising effort to support this. And I'm also joined by Bill Ford, who's sat before this group before and can help answer with expertise questions about past collaborations between the town and Friends of Middlebury Hockey, as well as the planning that went into that second floor addition. We're here tonight because we are very close to closing out the $350,000 fundraising campaign that's been going for the last 2.5 years. We're currently at $271,000 pledged towards that goal. And we've reached a point where Friends of Middlebury Hockey feels secure in taking on additional debt so that we can close out that campaign and get the work started to finish Memorial Sports Center. We've been talking with National Bank of Middlebury, Megan McLaughlin there, and we've talked through a scenario where we would take out an additional $100,000 loan and lump that in with our existing debt service and extend the term of our note by an additional 5 years. That would put us on a track where rather than paying just under $12,000 a year, or just under $12,000 per quarter through 2028, which would close out our existing debt, we would instead be paying about $11,000 per quarter through 2033. So our quarterly debt service would actually go down by about $1,000 in exchange for only a 5-year extension. That would put us on track to close out our campaign, get the work started on the second floor, and if ideally we could get this done this year, we'd be able to mark the 40-year anniversary of the founding of Friends of Middlebury Hockey by completing the work and finishing Memorial Sports Center to the original vision of what it could be.
Questions?
Okay.
What rate is that note at?
Our current note's at 3.75%.
Would they change the rate to extend it?
Megan is hesitant to quote me an exact rate until we're ready to formally proceed. The numbers she's been quoting me so far are using that same rate. One thing she did make clear, under no circumstances would the rate on our original note change. The only potential for any change would be on the new amount.
Okay.
So, and just some numbers if you're curious. On the fundraising that's been done so far, like I said, we're at $271,000 and a bit more. That's been comprised of an extraordinary number of donations at this point. We've seen 311 individual donations from corporations and families throughout the Addison County community. The bulk of the money, or the bulk of the donations have been small donations. We have 275 donations of less than $2,000. Average donation on those is $272 each. So this is something that did successfully capture the interest and the passion of the families that take advantage of Memorial Sports Center. And we'd really like to be able to bring this home for them.
When are you hoping to have it done by?
We would love to be able to get it done this year. At this point, that'll largely depend on whether or not we can get on people's work schedules.
Right. Is it permitted already?
There is an existing permit, and Bill, can I defer to you on more detail there?
Probably not.
Okay.
I'm not certain where our permit stands now. I think we would probably have to revise some of them because the plan is being slightly modified for the internal layout, so it might be like a plumbing
Yeah.
requirements.
But any external,
I don't think we should be affected because we already did the Act 250 when we put the addition. And all we're doing now is if this was someone's house, we're just finishing the basement or
yeah.
finishing the setup.
So there's no external
No.
work on this?
No, it's
Okay.
all internal.
Okay. Pleasure of the board, or any questions?
I'll make a motion to support the request of Friends of Middlebury Hockey to add a question to the town meeting wording, asking voters to approve the addition of $100,000
Yes, please.
to the town's note with the National Bank of Middlebury to complete improvements to the second floor of Memorial Sports Center and extend the term of the note by 5 years.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Final comments? None?
I think it's all been discussed before, but that's where the town taking the loan out with Fred's guaranteeing repayment.
Right.
Because that, I wouldn't want it to go to the voters as if the town was just borrowing it and
Yeah.
paying for it.
I think we'll make that clear in our, good point. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, and the relationships in place for that repayment from Friends of Middlebury Hockey are strong. There's a proven history dating back to an original loan that was taken out in 2000, then a secondary loan that was taken out in 2000, or the loan was taken out in 2008, where Friends of Middlebury Hockey, through our fee structure, in collaboration with the Memorial Sports Center Commission and their banner sales program, have responsibly made that debt service payment without any issues to this point.
You guys are good for it.
We do our best.
Okay. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Kathleen?
Year-to-date budget reports. The general fund is on track with last year's expenditures year-to-date. We're right at about 50% overall. I touched base with the police chief and director of operations, Bill Kernan, as department heads for our two largest departments. The chief said that overall, he's looking towards finishing the budget on target. Likewise, Bill Kernan notes that Public Works should be on track, though gravel road maintenance and stormwater expenses are higher than anticipated so far in FY19. So the winter weather, as usual, will tell the story there. To note that Bill anticipates overruns for equipment fund maintenance and repair of water mains. You also remember that we had the Halpin Road pump station repair that went on and on and on. We have a budget of $30,000 carried for pump station repairs, and that repair alone was $71,000. So Bob is going to look for opportunities in the sewer fund to make up that overrun there. Bob notes that there are receipts for sewer surcharges and septic dumping that are projected to be higher than anticipated by $40,000 for sewer surcharges and $10,000 for septic pumping. So that will help with the overall picture for the sewer department.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. Check warrants. Lindsay?
So motion to approve total expenditures in the amount of $607,451.95, consisting of $407,652.64 for accounts payable and $199,799.31 for payroll for the period of December 19th, 2018 through January 15th, 2019.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. And town manager's report.
First off, let's talk about your second meeting in February. As the Addison County Supervisory District annual meeting is on the fourth Tuesday of February, the board's regularly scheduled meeting date. For the past few years, the board has shifted its meeting either to the Monday or Wednesday of the same week. This is an opportunity for you to discuss whether or not you'd like to do that again this year.
What's the dates for Monday, and what are the dates you're looking for? Monday?
Tuesday, isn't it?
No, Monday or Wednesday, she said.
Oh,
So would you like to continue to meet, or would you like to attend the meeting?
so it's the 26th, correct? That's, the Tuesday, the 26th is when it
Right.
would be, so we would meet the 25th or the 27th if we chose to move it. I would like to attend the annual meeting, but if no one else is, I can certainly miss this meeting if you want to keep it.
Yeah, I won't even be able to be here on any of those days, so I'm gonna abstain from a vote on that one.
And looking at the way things are with this episode in our nation's capital, I think that's gonna be a problem week for me too. Could we move it?
So if I go and I'm not here, that's already 3 people.
So that's, yeah, now you're on the,
So do you want to talk about moving it up a week?
That would be nice.
to the 19th?
That is, I don't know how many of you are affected by, is that February vacation?
Yes,
Mhm.
but that
Oh, is
doesn't,
that February vacation? Yeah, so anybody with kids.
it doesn't, I mean,
We're not going anywhere. I mean, it doesn't,
yeah, at 7 PM, they're
That's-
home, hopefully,
Yeah.
so it doesn't matter.
yeah, it's,
Yeah, 19th 's fine.
I can do that.
So we're gonna move the 26th back to the 19th? Is that what we're, okay.
while we're talking about meeting schedule, can I ask about what we're doing for the rest of January? Because I was confused. Are we
So-
meeting next week?
We're
Yeah,
we're
one next
scheduled,
week.
we're scheduled to meet next week.
Okay.
There
I
is,
couldn't remember, I
If-
didn't have anything in my schedule. I knew we moved to this meeting, but then I couldn't remember if we moved to the second one or if it was still on the 4th Tuesday, so,
Next week is what we talked about,
okay,
22nd?
22nd.
Yeah.
We're gonna have 2 weeks in a row.
okay.
that said, it depends upon what we're challenging Kathleen to come in at for a budget and how much time she needs to work it. I mean, just, so we're giving her sufficient time to do a complete review. If we're, let's say if the feeling of the board is that we need to be a level level tax rate, and that's a pretty huge undertaking for Kathleen. If we're saying we're looking to shave a penny more, whatever the guidance is to Kathleen, we have the obligation, I think, at this point, to provide Kathleen some guidance.
Except that we have to have everything for submitting on the 28th, right? So,
Yeah. The warning has to be posted the first Sunday in February.
oh, so we could meet that.
You could meet and meet.
That's an option.
It's okay.
Do you want to meet on the 22nd, and if we need more time, meet again on the 29th, or?
We do that.
That's another option.
Lindsay is going to be away on the 29th.
Oh, no, I'll still be here,
Oh, you will, okay.
yeah. Missed my opportunity to fly
You,
back.
you want her to go somewhere, or?
Well, why don't we plan on meeting the 22nd? I think
And on 22nd, we can decide on the 29th, probably.
maybe Kathleen, you could look at it and say, this is what it would take. This is what you would have to
Yeah, okay.
pull out for a penny.
Mhm.
And these are some areas where we might get it, and for 2 pennies.
Well, a penny is about 300,000, right?
1 penny is $75,000 currently.
So we are
So-
looking- we are
You
looking
like
at
your pennies,
three-
but
Yeah.
only when we're spending.
So we're looking at 3 pennies right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, when the school budget comes in, that's gonna add how much you think?
So many pennies.
Yeah.
That's what I'm I'll try to nail down.
I will share with you, because Laura wasn't going to be here, we had a discussion before she left, and she's concerned about the school budget as well, and the implications for taxpayers and the overall tax rate. I'd kind of like to see what we've done for 5 years going, and you know, I do think that at some point, if there's like some of the additional funding is infrastructure related, and we have absorbed without increasing the tax rate, some increases in pay and benefits as a result of our employment packages. And if we continue to, if without growing the grand list, I mean, we can't forever hold it. I think we need to look at it and just say, what is the value proposition of each thing? And I agree we want to balance it, but I guess I fear that if we are always the one that toes the line as opposed to the school boards, people won't feel, two things. Number one, we will get ourselves back into a position that we were in 10 years ago with too much deferred infrastructure work. And secondly, that the taxpayers won't feel the full brunt of what the schools' true increases are doing. I mean, I get the challenges that they're up against, but I think we have a little bit more I don't feel that the town should have to absorb the school's increase in taxes through our failure to provide services to the rest of the community. So, I don't know, just a philosophical thing that I was trying to understand where we were coming at. We don't control the school's budget.
We don't. And I look at the last 5 years and really beyond that, I mean, it's been some amazing work that Kathleen and staff have done holding the line. And you're right, I mean, and then we get the shock after we do this hard work of holding the line, and we get the shock of what the schools hit us with. And meanwhile, we have all these essential services that we provide. And when do you get to the point it starts breaking? I mean, I look at capital improvements alone, and those things, we either cover them now or we cover them a lot more expensive later on. I mean, look at how much money we've had to spend over this last decade on improving our public building inventory, which I think we've done a good job at, but we reached that point because they were all failing. You know, the fire stations were failing, the police station was failing, the public works, or the public office building was failing, and suddenly we got hit with a big hit. And I don't want to ever get to that point again. So, Brian, you're absolutely right.
And I'm not a proponent for excessive spending. I mean,
No, it's controlled.
I think it's very controlled in a couple cents if you're talking about it. This is why I'd like to see what we've done over. I think we have to put it in perspective of a longer term. And we can't absorb a couple cents every year indefinitely because but if we haven't absorbed any increases for a while, then
I can give you a 5-year trend if you'd like, or even a longer trend if you'd like.
it'd be great. I think if you could, it'd be helpful to our discussions next week.
Well, I mean, a classic case is the new position for the library. I mean, I think there's a good argument for it. And it would be good as an essential service. But do we say we don't do that? And what's the detriment as we try to hold the line? You know, are we doing our services as well as we can? And maybe not.
And, you know, we have in the past said, okay, we support the position, and we're going to do it incrementally. And we did this with Chief, with the position, and we funded it half one year and then full the following year. And so, I mean, we do have some ways of onboarding it so it comes in gradually. And the nice thing to know would be if we could really foresee what's our school tax implications after the complete reappraisal, because our CLA right now is killing us. And so that, if we can get something that helps us with our discussions, because I do, you know, we can't be blind of the school's taxes, but I also we can't forget our essential services.
So therefore, I can't arbitrarily pull out a number and say, Kathleen, cut it by 1.1 cents, because that means nothing. I mean, so therefore, if there's a way that you could, as been mentioned, what do we get for 1, what do we get for 2, and then let us make a judgment on that, rather than just pull a number out of the air that could be meaningless.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks as always.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Well, let's see what I come up with.
No, I mean.
I'm glad you're here.
And the other thing is as Victoria pointed out, we could reach a little deeper into
The local option,
I'm sorry?
the local option.
The local option
Yeah.
fund, so. So we do have some, and, you know, frankly, I think that is why it's really good for us to have that discussion first at the town meeting, to see where the taxpayers and voters stand on their utilization of the local option tax. So,
Well, the reality is, that's one of the things that does contribute a little bit to the position that every shire town has in the state of
Right.
just costs that are excessive that the other towns don't get. So that's the one way we're getting a little bit back on it.
So just to note, within infrastructure, we are not unanimous or in agreement on the local option tax being used to fund like the general, you know, for it to be like a
funding source.
an offset of the tax rate.
Yeah.
There is opposition to that idea. So just, you know, I don't know if that would be a reflection of how voters would feel at town meeting or not, but there is some opposition to that. That's was not what it was intended for. And growing accustomed to having that money to use as a tax rate offset is not right, and
Well, I
so
think
those are some of the arguments.
those are the counter arguments,
So-
and that's why I think we need to get a sense where the majority stands, and I do think that it would be nice to just look and see how a few of the other similar towns utilize that as well, because, let me just finish my thought here, Fred. You know, we also hear that we absorb a greater percentage of the cost for the outlying community services, and so that is one way that they can participate in that. And
Yep.
so maybe the taxpayer, when it comes down to the alternative of paying more on property taxes or allowing the greater community to fund it, I mean, most of the outlying community come to Middlebury to purchase their automobiles, their tractors, their, you know, some capital expenditures that provide a pretty significant 1 cent tax to fund the local community. Fred?
You may have noticed in the news that South Burlington.
What?
You may have noticed in the news that South Burlington is actually considering asking the legislature
For a
for an
second.
additional
Yeah.
cent. When I was involved with going to the legislature and talking to the Ways and Means Committee on this, this is a benefit to the state. They actually take a cut of these revenues. Furthermore, it is true that it was earmarked specifically for the bridge at the time. We didn't really know how it was going to work. We didn't know how stable the revenues would be and how they would come in. We definitely wanted to assure ourselves that the bridge could be funded at the time. but it's turned out to be successful, even through recessions. It's never gone down. And the prospect of a second cent, I mean, think of what an economic development benefit it would be to the town to take $1 million, or 995,000, whatever the amount is this year, off the amount to be raised by taxes. That might stir some business attraction, to reduce property taxes by a significant amount. And so the person who wrote a letter to you in your packet about, this is going to send people to Bristol to buy paint.
Yeah.
If you bought $30 worth of paint and you had, at a cent, 1%, you're going to spend 30 cents to drive to Bristol. Is that really going to drive people to Bristol? Or if you're having lodging in Middlebury, paying $150, is $1.50 more going to drive you to lodging somewhere out of town? Really? You're right. This town does shoulder the burden of nonprofits that serve the region. It shoulders the traffic through the region. And there's a lot of, to have a small millage on a very broad base is proven to be a very attractive thing. And I admire your conservatism at holding on to it and not spending it. And,
I'm not recommending that we don't spend it. You just haven't heard yet what I want to spend it on.
Only some of them, right?
Right, and it is true for larger ticket items. It does make a difference, but virtually all of the regional centers, that you might buy building supplies or so forth, have a local option tax as well.
Yeah.
So
It makes a bigger difference for a homeowner when their taxes go up. Property tax.
True.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what we've advocated for is hard tangible items. So it kind of comes down to either we fund it this way and take in some share from the broader region, or we pay for them all ourselves when they're failing, so.
So, Fred, I think I can count on you to be at town meeting, knowing your
I think
activism.
I spoke in
and
support of it
counting
last year.
on you
I'll do the same.
Okay.
I think it's proven to be something that hasn't been a deterrent, or if people really want to drive to Bristol to save 30 cents, it's not that big a loss for us.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So I would just note in our considerations, the potential bond vote on the East Middlebury
Floods.
hazard mitigation project
Yeah.
as a potential, also anticipating maybe a November bond vote on some big water projects, which could also be potentially funded by some of that money. So I have lots of places I could spend that money.
Yeah.
So don't
We-
think
we
for a minute that
We recognize that.
committee that I
We've seen your
chair-
list.
The committee that I chair is all about money that I don't have. So I have lots of places for it to go.
Okay, so that took a long time. But update on Select Board project priorities. Prepared a status update on your project priorities. It's in your packet. To note that Robert Popinja has resigned as a lister, so there is a vacancy in the office of lister, and hopefully a person will submit a petition to run for that office, as we've had difficulty filling that in the past. Purpose Energy Middlebury Resource Recovery Center. Town staff met with Tad Hasselback and Eric Fitch of Purpose Energy for an update on their plans to construct a waste-to-energy facility in the industrial park, which will treat wastewater from Agrimart and Otter Creek Brewery in an anaerobic digester. They are working to submit their application to the Public Utilities Commission for a certificate of public good in early to mid-summer, and will meet with the Select Board around the same time to provide a full update. The report on the evaluation of corrective action alternatives for remediation of contaminated soils at the David Page's cotton mill site, AKA the powerhouse, has been reviewed by the Department of Environmental Conservation, and the department concurred with Lincoln Applied Geology's recommendation of Alternative 3, signage and fencing to prevent trespassing and exposure to contaminants in the soils. The next step is the preparation of a corrective action plan, i.e. an implementation plan for the approved alternative. Lincoln Applied Geology has proposed a fee of $5,000 for the preparation of the plan, and that amount is included in the FY20 General Fund budget request. As a follow-up to the board's February 28, 2018 approval of amendments to Middlebury zoning and subdivision regulations, the board asked for a one-year reminder to provide feedback to the Planning Commission on any specific subjects the Select Board believes should be addressed during the next bylaw amendment cycle. As suggested in Director of Planning and Zoning Jennifer Murray's process for Select Board requesting changes to zoning, the board may want to discuss providing input on specific topics at its annual planning retreat. Addison County Solid Waste Management District Drop-Off Center. Town staff recently met with Terry Kaczynski, District Manager of the Addison County Solid Waste Management District, who provided an update on the district's effort to locate a drop-off center for residential waste in the northern part of the county. As efforts to acquire property in Ferrisburg for the drop-off facility were not successful, the district is now considering other options for providing a residential drop-off facility, which could include expanding its existing facility on Route 7 South. That's.
Thank you, Kathleen. So, board member concerns. Farhad.
Yes, I thank you, Kathleen, for taking us on a tour the other day and making me go down that basement. And
You opted to go in the
and not even
basement.
helping me. Do you know what happened? At the old wastewater facility behind the PD.
Yes?
We went down there and I wanted to go down the basement, and Dan said, "Oh, there's nothing there." I said, "No, I still want to take a look." So I went down and I stepped on a sheet of ice and I went under, up to my knees, and icy cold water.
Oh!
I thought the floor gave away. I thought I went into the floor, but so the rest of the tour I was like freezing.
Oh!
And Kathleen is laughing at me. So pardon me?
That wasn't the penguin plunge?
That was not the penguin plunge. I've done penguin plunge, by the way.
Farhad was disappointed that Lindsay and I did not run down the stairs to rescue him.
So payback is going to be there. The other thing I want to talk about is I see this petition for the plastic bag ban. So I had a couple of local businesses reach out to me about the concerns they have about that. From this language, I don't really get what they're trying to do. Is it an outright ban on plastic bags, or it's going to be replaced by paper bags or reusable bags? What are we looking at? So my concern is there are some of the bigger businesses or the downtown, like clothing business, they might not care, but smaller businesses who provide these plastic bags versus paper bags. Paper bags cost you at least 5 to 6 times more than a plastic bag. Plastic bags are easier and cheaper to produce compared to paper. And if it's an outright ban, then what do we provide if customer comes in and buys 50 items from my store? What do I tell them if they don't have a bag? And there has to be a solution to that. It's going to increase the burden on small businesses to carry paper bags who cannot afford it. That's going to be a deterrent, in my opinion. In my opinion, I think I've seen a lot of stores in Massachusetts, like ShopRite. They have plastic or paper bags, but they also have a sign that says if you want a bag, they'll charge you a quarter or 15 cents or whatnot. I think that'll be a better way to encourage people to use reusable bags, I think.
Well, from what my observation is that the trend among the buying public, especially when they see that thing, of a dime, because other states like California do that, is they tend to be more active at remembering to bring their own bag, and in fact, there's a greater awareness of reducing the plastic just through a natural progression like that.
It is, and if you notice, the younger generation, the college crowd, they are very aware of this environmental concern about using plastic. So when they come into my store, even if they have to carry 25 items in their arm, they'll say, we don't want a bag. But the people like us who are used to using bags all our lives, even though I have reusable bags in my car all the time, I never remember to bring it into the store. And then after, when you're paying, all of a sudden you remember that, oh, I don't have a bag. So what are the options? What are we doing with this ordinance is my question.
So it sounds like it would be good to have Amy in to answer some of these questions about the intent.
You might take a look at Brattleboro's ordinance, and you might ask, since that's something that's been in effect since 2015, how's that working? How does enforcement work? Who chases after this? And you know, one option is this is really intended. I think the petitioners are intending to deal with the single-use bags that get used for about 12 minutes between the time you put it in Shaw's and get it to your refrigerator. You could provide bags that are not single-use, aren't so thin and so forth, and charge for them. And there are people who use plastic bags over and over, and the ones that I might say that the single-use type aren't very usable for too many times over. But more durable bags are used by people for other things. So it isn't necessarily anti-business. It's just focused on, I think, the really super thin single-use things that are virtually always.
But compare that to paper. I don't think paper is multi-use product also. When it's a paper bag, if it gets wet, it's going to get destroyed. Plastic bag, I have reused plastic bags all the time.
Yeah.
Even in my store, I have a practice of using the same bag over and over for certain purposes I use. A lot of people, there is a lady who walked into the store the other day and she said she makes yarn out of plastic bags. It's a yarn made out of plastic bags, and they make placemats and stuff. So there are solutions. I'm not saying that we should
Reuse
plastic.
is a good thing.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something in between. But I'd recommend looking at Brattleboro's ordinance. I already emailed it to Laura.
Yeah, I have that, yeah.
Now, they were having a meeting. Did that already occur? It did, okay. I think one of the towns, another town that's looking at this is doing it more as an advisory vote, so that it would be more of a transitional and allow some time.
I think that's the appropriate thing to do.
It seems like that would be a really good first step, as opposed to at least allow some transition period if there is going to be a change. So, okay, thank you.
I was sitting there thinking about this ongoing chicanery, and there's other terms I would use, but to maintain professionalism, I won't say them, of this government shutdown. And do we see any things here in our town operations that are likely to be affected by a continuing ongoing? And I'm
One thing
wondering-
I've thought about is the FEMA project. They were very, very slow. They've been historically very, very slow in reviewing and approving applications. So now they're going to have a fantastic backlog. And
The river project.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So I wonder, when do we get to a point, or is there a point where we basically say to our legislators and our governor very strongly, it's time that legislatures and state houses across the country say to the national government, enough of this garbage. You know, this is affecting the ability of essential services to happen. It's, you know, obviously we have a lot of very dedicated people who are working right now and aren't to continue some aspect of government operations and aren't getting paid. I mean, enough is enough. And it seems that since Washington can't lead, maybe it's time for each state house to strongly come out and say, get your acting gear and solve this. So I'm just wondering, do we send a letter to our legislators or request to our legislators and say, put this as a top priority.
So, would you like me to look into the possibility of the board signing a letter at its next meeting if
This is not resolved?
this is
We should.
not resolved?
Yeah, I think so, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had to go to the IRS office a couple of weeks ago to get a tax transcript. I didn't even realize that they will be shut down up in Burlington. I drove all the way, there's a small sign that says
Yeah.
they're shut down indefinitely.
Yeah, no,
Good point.
it affects in so many ways. I mean, it's, whether it's food producers and inspections or transportation or what have you, so.
There's a lot of government lending agencies which lend to, agricultural lending. A lot of that is government-backed. Any of your, a lot of their smaller business loans are government-backed. There's a lot of
Yep.
activities that are being impacted that we're not really seeing at the level that we're at maybe, but they're boiling below the surface out there.
We as state and local don't shut down. We still have services we have to do, and we rely on our partners on the federal level to do their part too, so. That's all my comment for tonight.
I just had a note about meeting schedule, but we already addressed it, so I'm good.
All right, Lindsay?
I think I'm good.
Okay. Would somebody take us into executive session?
You want me to do it? In accordance with Vermont open meeting law requirements, I move that the board find that premature general knowledge of the consideration of contracts would clearly place the select board at a substantial disadvantage because the select board risks disclosing its litigation strategy if it discussed the contracts in public.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I further move that the board enter into executive session to discuss contracts under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, so 9:02, we're a little late in our adjournment. 9:02, we're moving into executive session.
It's not too bad.